each reporter. Good morning. We've implemented the 0+3 quarantine arrangements for about 2 weeks. It started on the 26th of September. We have seen positive signs. We have seen increase in the number of arrivals at our airport. In October, the daily arrivals compared with that for September grew by about 25 to 30%. And for the number of arrivals, you have seen an increase of 30%. For non-Hong Kong residents, non-mainlanders arriving at Hong Kong, the figure has grown by 80%. That means the 0+3 quarantine arrangement has attracted more overseas visitors to Hong Kong. And we've seen many major events being held in Hong Kong one after another, including the Hong Kong Masters of Snookers that has just completed, and I want to congratulate Mr. Fu Ka-chun for getting the first runner-up. And then the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra will also perform in Hong Kong. And next month, we will also have the Global Financial Leaders Forum in Hong Kong. There are many local events being held, including the Cross Harbour Swimming Gala. And November, we're going to have the Walk a Million again. It will be on the Bay Link in Chang Guan O. So participants are eager to join, and the ambience is good. And the 0+3 quarantine arrangement has also enabled business visitors to come to Hong Kong for various commercial activities, including exhibitions. And from what I gathered, more foreign domestic helpers are finding it easier to come to Hong Kong to help local families. And many have come back to visit friends and families because of the new arrangement. And since the new quarantine arrangements, we've also relaxed some social distancing measures. At restaurants, we allow 10 in a table, and in bars, we allow 6 in a table. So the atmosphere is good. I have seen pictures, seeing people gathering and sharing meals happily. And the catering industry has also expressed that they expect business to grow by 20 to 30%. So the whole community is vibrant. Economic activities are vibrant, and I think we will have a comeback, and our economy will become more and more active. So we have introduced the 0+3 quarantine arrangement with good results, and many would like us to relax it further to 0+0 quarantine arrangements. But let me remind you that when I implemented 0+3, I did mention a number of uncertain factors which would require us to be cautious. The number of confirmed cases may rise, burdening our healthcare system. We have to check whether there may be unforeseen changes. So we have to tread carefully before we consider the next step forward. But the direction is clear. Under a controlled manner and bearing unforeseen circumstances, including the appearance of more malicious subvariants of the virus. Now, our direction is clear. We'd like to allow maximum room for social and economic activities because the number of confirmed cases is around 3,500 to 4,500 per day. Yesterday, it was 350, and over the weekend, 4,900, close to 5,000. And we've also got to note the number of imported cases. Before, we decided to implement 0+3, there were less than 200 imported cases per day. But recently, the figure has risen to over 300. Yesterday, we had 396 imported cases. Before we implemented 0+3 to now, the number of imported cases have more than doubled. As for number of arrivals at our airport, the number of arrivals grew by 30%. But the number of imported cases has more than doubled. That is quite a substantial percentage. And a new subvariant has found its way into Hong Kong, although the initial assessment is that its seriousness may not be more than that, what we have in the community already. And because of the 0+3 arrangement, we have more visitors and more outbound travelers. As a result, new subvariants may be brought into Hong Kong, and we have to bear in mind this point. And I have to be very careful about the following. There are people who do not follow the rules. In general, we are very cooperative in fighting the epidemic to put it under control. If we cannot achieve the purposes of our measures, then things will be very different. Now, there are people who carry a red code who left their places of isolation. We've already announced that there are at least 2, and those who violated the rule with an amber code, at least 3. And there may be other cases. For those who violated the rules, of course, we will pursue them. We will prosecute them. And these people have sabotaged our efforts to fight the epidemic. So we must condemn such irresponsible behavior. And of course, there are also suspected cases of using fake medical exemption certificates. And then there are still people who violate our compulsory testing notices. In the past 2 weeks, in various operations, we have identified about 150 who did not comply with our CTN.
All these cases reveal that this could just be the tip of an iceberg. In other words, there may be a large number of people who do not follow the rules, causing an impact on our infection control efforts in the community. On the other hand, we also have more to be decided for vaccination coverage in relation to the young and the old, from sparing the requirement of quarantine in hotels to this new arrangement. We need to keep track of the changes. We need to keep in view the change in infection numbers. If we are to roll out new measures, we need to make sure that things will remain smooth and orderly. All in all, the objective is to allow the greatest room for socio-economic activities. Questions are welcome. The floor is open. If you want to ask questions, please raise your hand and use the mic when you speak, and please limit yourselves to 2 questions, and also tell us which media outlet you represent. This reporter. I'm from Ming Pao, Chief Executive. I have 2 questions. Regarding the third jab coverage in Hong Kong and Singapore, we have a similar coverage. Can we now start the timetable to resume normalcy? And do you have fatigue as you've worn the mask for 3 years? And in considering our anti-epidemic strategy, have you considered the chance of joining hands with the mainland in fighting the epidemic and hence not implement 0+0? And about the Russian super yacht berthed in Hong Kong, a press release has been issued. You're not going to implement the third-party sanction, but will there be any measure in relation to Russian capital or listings in Hong Kong? The epidemic measures to be introduced in each place will have to have regard to the actual circumstances in that place. Now, we should not compare ourselves with Singapore because we have a different healthcare system. We have a different culture. People have different habits. So such a comparison is not meaningful. It is impossible to copy the rules and practices of another place. Like what I said just now, our objective is to maximize the room for activities without compromising our infection control efforts. We need to have regard to the actual circumstances. As I've explained many times, we need to implement infection control measures because the epidemic is still very much in existence in Hong Kong. We still have infections. We have a number of measures such as social distancing measures and a mask wearing requirement. And we must not just brush aside the local infections and believe that the epidemic has come to an end. This is not true. We make an effort to introduce and follow the anti-epidemic measures exactly because of that. The objective is to achieve the maximum efficiency with the lowest cost. This is set out in my election manifesto as I assumed office. I already explained that we take a targeted approach in order to achieve the maximum efficiency with the lowest cost when it comes to fighting the epidemic. When it comes to connection with the world and the mainland, we take the two-pronged approach. They go in parallel. They're not mutually exclusive, and there is no conflict between the two. As our epidemic situation improves, there would be a stronger basis for discussion with the mainland authorities. So it is necessary that we rein in the epidemic just like what the mainland is doing. So I urge the community not to view the two as mutually exclusive. We strive to achieve both at the same time. Second point about the Russian yacht berthed in Hong Kong, we need to abide by the laws of Hong Kong. Any UN sanctions will be upheld by Hong Kong as there is legal backing. Any act must be backed by the law. We have the rule of law in Hong Kong. We must act in accordance with the law. So when it comes to certain activities or assets, they must be dealt with according to the laws of Hong Kong. And it is common knowledge that we have high respect for the rule of law, and any act will be dealt with according to the law. Hong Kong is an international financial center, and we have rules and regulations aligned with international standards. Some places may impose certain actions, and yet we will not perform any action without legal backing in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, we'll make sure that any act will be conducted in accordance with the laws of Hong Kong.
Next, we have one from the English media.
Hi, thank you, John Lee. I'm Kari from Bloomberg. I wanted to kind of just follow up on the Russian sanctions and ask, the U.S. has recently expressed concern that Hong Kong is increasingly being used as a place to avoid sanctions, mainly Russian oligarchies and companies. What is your response to that? And also, Ms. Carrie Lam was sanctioned and had to have her salary paid in cash because of them. What is that situation for you? Are you being paid in cash as well?
Well, first of all, a particular country, because of that country's own consideration, decides to take any measure against anything, that is that country's decision. In Hong Kong, we respect the rule of law, and we will do anything when there is a legal basis, when it in some way is controlled by the law, and the activities in some way indicates that it is not. But we will comply with any United Nations resolution on sanction because Hong Kong has the legal basis to enforce it, and we will comply with United Nations sanctions. That is our system. That is our rule of law. We cannot do and we will not do anything that has no legal basis. The second thing about the so-called sanction imposed on people in Hong Kong without justification, it is a very barbaric act, and I'm not going to comment on the effect of such barbaric act because officials in Hong Kong do what is right to protect the interests of the country and the interests of Hong Kong. So we will just laugh off the so-called sanctions.
In the interest of time, we'll only take one more question. The reporter in black in the front row. I'm from cable TV. A few days ago, there were papers saying that the Hong Kong SL government has taken legislation on Article 23 from the legislative timetable of this year. I'd like to know the progress. Have you completed the study and also the drafting? What is the timetable you have in mind? As for amendments to occupational safety and health legislation, the fine for indictable offenses will be raised from $10 million or lower from 10 million to 6 million. And also for offenses, summary offenses, the fine reduced from 3 million to 1.5 million. What is your view on that? The basic law has stated very clearly that we should legislate on Article 23 as far as possible, and it's also our duty. However, there is one more important point. The legislation must be effective. In terms of national security, risks are ever-changing. And we see rapid deterioration in geopolitics. In the past, we never imagined that some measures could be used to attack another country to threaten its national security. Against that background, we must be able to legislate an effective piece of legislation that can tackle extreme circumstances. And therefore, the legislation must be thorough and in-depth, and we have to scrutinize new measures that has appeared and also what new measures we have. Hopefully, we can fully address these measures in our legislation on Article 23. We do not want to come up with a piece of legislation with loopholes requiring us to review it again too soon. So the legislation must be comprehensive and thorough. We've noted that in some common law jurisdictions, they have introduced or new legislative proposals on national security that are very draconian. They have proposed, for instance, that with regard to persons with national security threat, they can be forbidden from leaving certain premises for a long time, and the prohibition can be repeated. So we will keep in view these legislative proposals and also how they balance human rights in these jurisdictions. We have to review the situation very meticulously so that we can have, in common law, have a piece of legislation that can protect our countries from the threats and risks of national security. Occupational safety and health. Well, the legislation is being scrutinized by the legislature. The government's position is clear. We must give sufficient protection to our workers in terms of occupational safety. We've already indicated our position. The legislation is being scrutinized by the council, and I think it will be handled appropriately. Thank you.